So I come from a Christian home, come from a Christian background. My dad was a pastor. My mum always involved in the church, strict parents, which is where I really began to rebel. Started selling weed and things like that. Started to get involved in gang culture, doing petty crime. Started to get arrested here and there. Started to clash with my parents, predominantly with my father. So would clash a lot with my dad, and they would find things in my room and just kind of like the regular stuff of a rebellious kid. I liked rap music, but I really began to really love rap music. So within the midst of all of that, I caught a case and I went to prison. I woke up with the feeling, bro. I never forget it. I don't have that current feeling now, but this is just what was going on in me, and I've had it again since then. I have had it since then, but it's not like this is I've had that feeling. This feeling's always been with me since then, because it hasn't. When I explained that how I felt to Dwayne said to me, "Bro, that was the baptism of the Holy Spirit you was having right there."
When may God come kaboom. There's just a few things that I'm sure of. Christ is God and God is good and we're all morons. I try to shut him out, but Jesus kicked the door off and blast me in the
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Live Music once again. If you're new, welcome. If you are not new, welcome again. And today, we have a special guest. We have Cerose in the building. Cerose, how we doing?
Blessings, fam. Yes, we're doing well by the grace of God. Thank
Yeah,
you very much.
listen,
How are
that
you?
that answer was short and sweet, but trust me, Cerose has a lot to say. Cerose is inspiration to me, and I'm sure when you listen to his story, you will be inspired, and also give glory to God for his story. God is a God of amazing grace, and I'm sure that's how you'd sum up your life story, right? God has been gracious to you.
Definitely, fam. The most gracious, the most merciful. You know what I mean? Eternally grateful. When I think of my past and to where the Lord has me now, it's nothing short of a miracle. So yeah, definitely.
So let's begin with your life story. Just give us a timeline. We'd love to. I've heard your story before in a lot of interviews, and I would like my friends here at Live Music to hear it as well. So if you do us the pleasure of just sharing your story and how God has been good to you, that would be awesome.
Mm. So I come from a Christian home, come from a Christian background. My dad was a pastor. Um, my mum always involved in the church, heavily involved in the community. Used to put on supplementary educational classes during the week for the youth in the community, youth club, things like that. Summer project in the summertime, as well as church meetings, Bible study, prayer meeting during the week. And that was heavily influenced by the gospel. So growing up, that was a huge part of my life. That was my life, to be honest. If it wasn't some kind of community activity, it was a church activity, you know. And I would say that I guess that kind of like added to my rebellion as I got older, because as a youth, I never felt like I had free time. I was always envious of other kids, being able to have their Saturdays, being able to have their Sundays, and do what they wanted to do. Do you know what I mean? Saturday, I was at Saturday school. I might have had the afternoons, but you know what I mean? Once you've had the whole morning and the beginning of the afternoon, and then you've got like from 3 to whatever, 9 o'clock, it's not the same. You know what I mean? And on a Sunday as well, we'd be in the church van going around the community picking up the church people, and kids in my neighborhood would be playing out. But I have to go to church. I'm in this, these tight, shiny shoes and suit and tie, and I'm saying church clothes and whatever, in the minibus. with my mum and my dad, and big hats and you know what I'm saying, typical Afro Caribbean 1980s vibes, church van, church clothes. So yeah, I come from a Pentecostal tradition. My parents are both Jamaican. Um, and my parents was a lot older than than my peers' parents. So I'm the youngest of four. My oldest sibling is probably in his early 60s now. You know what I'm saying? And there's a huge gap between me and my last sibling. There's 13 years between me and my last sibling. So even though I am a child of four, I very much grew up like a only child, because growing up, it was only me in the house. Everyone else moved out. You know what I mean? And I guess I felt a bit of pressure as well, being the last child. I feel like a lot of expectations of my parents was kind of like placed on me, expectations that maybe my peers didn't live up to, for whatever reason. So so yeah, growing up, you know, um, heavily influenced by church culture, predominantly Pentecostal Jamaican church culture, having older, strict parents. Um, yeah, didn't really do well academically. Growing up, it was later on discovered that I have dyslexia. But growing up, especially in that time, it wasn't sort of a thing that was really understood at that time. So, and if I'm real, I would say that I think my parents was in denial about that as well. Do you know what I mean? So, there was a lot of pressure I felt being placed for me to do well academically, um, as a youth growing up, going through primary school and into my early years in secondary school. Through primary school, I didn't get things. Do you know what I mean? Um, Particularly maths. I struggled with maths a lot. I literally used to just copy my neighbor's work. I
Your
always,
neighbor.
yeah, like the kids sitting next to me, I would
Yeah, I'm
always
just
copy
joking.
their
I'm just
work.
joking.
You get me? I
Yeah.
always enjoyed English. I enjoyed creating stories and writing poems. I never really liked reading, but I always always liked creating stories. And even stuff like rapping. I was rapping in primary school. I still recall some of my primary school raps. You know what I mean? Used
Do
to
you
put
want, do you
on.
want to do you want to give us a
Nah,
preview?
nah, we won't bother with that. I used to put on plays at my school. I put on a play for 3 years at my primary school called The Crazy Cranky Show. Which again I have very fond memories of that. So my childhood was a mixture of fun things creatively, and even the whole church thing. I'm glad for my whole church upbringing, and for the way my parents instilled the scriptures and you know Christianity in my life. I understand they did it their way, coming from the school that they come from and the generation that they are. I might not have done it that way, but I'm grateful nonetheless, because it definitely sowed the seed of what would germinate later on in life. Do you know what I mean? And I believe that God used that and still uses that to this day. Um, you know, so yeah, um, that was a bit of my childhood. Going into secondary school, yeah, I mean, again, it's like I didn't really get secondary school. I mean, I enjoyed the social side of it, going to school, hanging out with people, with friends, doing stuff like that. But as far as the learning part, like it just kind of really got worse. You know what I mean? And even the things that I enjoyed, like English and writing stories, with secondary school began to become suppressed, because things like Shakespeare came into it, and I just didn't get Shakespeare. Do you know what I mean? I didn't get the language. I didn't get. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've really, I mean, the King James version of the Bible is not my go-to version. Do you know what I mean? Because of the old English. Like I can't I can't get it. You know what I mean? I struggle to really understand it. So translations of the Bibles, I like the new King James version rather than the original King James version. I like the ESV. I look at many different Bible translations, but going back to school and English, secondary school, yeah, English, which was something that I enjoyed in primary school, I began to hate in secondary school because of things like Shakespeare. Um, Maths and science, I just hated those things. And, because of all of that, I just lost interest in school very, very quickly. Um, didn't take any exams. I used to bunk when it was exam time, and I left school when I was 15, so I have no GCSEs. Didn't do no coursework. I was bunking from year 10. I was literally bunking every day. I would leave the house to go to school, and I would end up on the trains, riding the trains with my brethrens, you know, and things like that, getting into mischief and going to other schools. You reach a certain age, 13, 14, you start discovering girls, smoking, different peer groups. You're going through adolescence, puberty, your body's changing. Yep, so many things are going on. Do you know what I mean? So around that time, around the age of 14, 15, which is where I really began to rebel. Started selling weed and things like that. Started to get involved in gang culture, doing petty crime. Started to get arrested here and there. Started to clash with my parents, predominantly with my father a lot more, as my father was a very strict, um, you know, he laid down the law, and we've got a saying in Jamaica, two bull can't rail in one pen, so if I think I'm a man, I can't live in another man's house and do what I want to do type of thing, you know what I mean? So would clash a lot with my dad. And they would find things in my room and just kind of like the regular stuff of a rebellious kid. Do you know what I mean? Um, I'm simplifying a lot of this story as well for the sake of time. Do you know what I mean? Don't want to exhaust it. So around the age of um 16, I started going out with a girl that was 21 years old. To me, at that time, she was a big woman. Do you know what I mean? Even though now, if I look back, she's still a little girl. But to me, at 16, 21-year-old was a big woman. She had her own house, and all these type of things. And by the time I was 15, I was raving. I used to sneak out of my parents' house in the middle of the night and
And you
go.
would be able to get to the clubs.
Yeah, so it wasn't a club. It was more like a blues dance. So a blues dance is like it would be like a dance in a community center or a dance in even a house. You know what I mean? So in Jamaican culture, within, I don't know, the 60s to maybe the 90s, this was a thing. It was called a blues dance, and it would be like sound system culture. Again, that's a Jamaican thing for those who are not familiar with sound system culture. But sound system culture was like, you know, people would buy their own equipment, so they have their own amps and turntables and big speakers, and they will go around putting on dances. And they've had names like, Stone Love, Metro Media, King Addies, African Star. These were all different sound systems. Those ones that were Jamaican sound systems. In the UK, as young people, we would have sound systems like Outlaw and Studio Classic and King Lexus, and my sound system was called Black Hawk. So we'd have different sound systems, and what we would do is we would have our own personalized songs. So the big sound systems have big artists like Bounty Killer and Beanie Man and those kind of artists, and they would record their own song, like one of their own songs, like for instance, a Beanie Man song. you know, welcome the girl, them sugar. And what he would do, he would say, this is Beanie Man. I'm a one for big up Black Hawk Sound. And da 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 da. And it will go into the song. So it would be, he would do his song, but he would specifically personalize it for you and your sound, right? And that was called a dub plate. So this is a thing in sound system culture. What used to happen? Sound systems would collect dub plates. They would get big artists to re-record their song either on the same beat or on a different beat or whatever, calling their name in it. Um, and then from then you'd get one dub plate, then you get another until you've got enough where you can play a whole dance with nothing but dub plates. Yeah, nothing but these personalized records. And there used to be competitions, what we called sound clash, where my sound would play our selection of dub plates for half an hour. The other sound would come on and play their selection of dub plates for a half an hour, and then we would go back and forth to see who's got the best dub plates. You know what I mean? It would be a sound clash, and then in the end of it, so we could have rounds, and at the end of it, we'd be going dub for dub. So like I play my dub plate, they play their dub plate, and based on the response of the crowd, would determine the winner. You know, I'm giving you guys a history lesson on the dancehall culture, but there you go. So it was within that space where I was going out, um, like creeping out of my parents' house and going to those kind of parties. So it wasn't clubs where you need ID to get in or anything like that. And I was a part of a sound. I used to follow my cousin's uncle's sound at the time, which was called Mello's Mobile Studio. And that's how I would get in, because I'm a part of the sound. I will help carry the boxes. I will help them set up. Um, and nobody really cares what you're doing. Yeah, you could be 15, but no one's watching you. So you're drinking Guinness, you're smoking weed. Do you know what I mean? No one really cares what you're up to, as long as you're there and you're not causing no trouble. I think the elders at that time looked at it like, well, it's better to have the younger people with us rather than on the streets keeping up a madness. Do you know what I mean? Even if they're smoking a little weed or drinking a Heineken or whatever. Um, so so yeah, I was a part of that culture for a very long time. And sound system culture, I mean, it's I mean, any Jamaican or even Caribbean will tell you it's just a part of life, you know. Um, it doesn't it's not a big thing how it was back then because it was literally like a sport. But now it doesn't really exist how it used to. I mean, music's changed, everything's changed now. Those were the golden days. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, yeah, I was going to as a part of that world, and from that world, which is where I sort of started to hone my craft in doing music. Chatting on the mic, um, you know, DJing, doing reggae songs in front of people on a rhythm. So they would turn over the single, the vinyl, the record, and it would be the instrumental. Do you know what I mean? And there would always be a time in the party, in the dance, where they say it's artist time. You know what I mean? And then all the artists would come on, and they'd turn on the rhythms, and the rhythms would be playing, and we'd all be spitting on the mic. And a lot of times there'll be big artists in the dance as well, like people who are stars within the culture, within dance or reggae culture, you know. And I was able to hone my craft. That was really like the training ground for me, as far as performing, knowing what how to project my voice from my belly, knowing timing, knowing the response of the crowd, all these kind of things. And through that stemmed me getting involved with a record label called Yush Records, which was a local record label in Brixton. Bearing in mind these times, I'm talking about the 90s, and it's vinyl, it's record. I think CDs existed then, but CDs was very much like the new technology kind of thing. So there is no streaming, there is no YouTube, there is no, you know what I mean? Nothing like that. we're still talking about records, vinyl, turntables, techniques, things like that, right? Some of you guys watching this don't even know what I'm talking about. But Google's your friend. Google all these things and you'll see what I'm talking about. So yeah, when I was 17, 18, around that age, I recorded my first vinyl record, my first published music under Yush record label. It was called Youth Man Have Control, which was reggae. So I started off as a reggae artist. Um, yeah, and yeah, so that went out. It did a lot for me as a young person, um, thinking like I can actually do this. You know what I mean? The community quickly gravitated to it. I quickly became very popular in my community for doing reggae music. At the time, my name was Black Rhino. Um, I formed this crew called Fright Night Crew, which was a collective of different reggae artists within the community. Um, and within a couple of years we got quite big as far as underground um reggae collective. These are not the days of the internet. There's no internet, there's no going viral. This is word of mouth culture. You go somewhere, you mash up the place, people start talking about you, and before you know it, it's like you're a bit of a thing, you're a bit of a legend within the community, a local legend within the community. So the Fright Night Crew got to a stage where we had big artists coming around the studio in Angeltown, around Yush Records, because they wanted a bit of the Fright Night vibes to rub off on them. So you had big artists, people like Tenafly, people like Top Cat. Like these are huge artists at that time. Um, and I mean, if you Google them now, you'll see how big they were. If you YouTube them or whatever, Top Cat, Tenafly, people like Daddy Freddy, you know, these were legends. And for them to be coming around Fright Night Crew and to have love for Black Rhino, to have love for Rhino for me was was a big thing. Um, so from that, and we did loads of different things, kind of like done a lot of shows throughout London, throughout the UK, nationally, um, you know, and throughout that, I was always involved in music, but not making money from music. So I was always, you know, doing stuff on the streets. Um, and it was somewhere around, I can't even say the year because I don't even know, but it was maybe early 2000s where, I mean, I liked rap music, um, but I really began to really love rap music through listening to Biggie Smalls, um, because Biggie had a Jamaican influence. Biggie's mum's Jamaican, so started listening to Biggie Smalls. You know, Biggie Smalls used to make Jamaican references. Biggie Smalls' mum was Jamaican, and at the time, the the dance hall community was embracing hip hop a lot. So Scare Them Crew, Bounty Killers, Scare Them Crew, um, was kind of like doing rap but in a reggae accent. So the Scare Them Crew helped me to discover Biggie, and then Biggie kind of like opened the doors to hip hop for me. Do you know what I mean? So I heard Biggie, then that opened my ears to Tupac, and then that opened my ears to the West Coast scene, then the East Coast scene, and then I went back in time and found out about people like Rakim and KRS One, and then I found out, you know, the founder of hip hop was a Jamaican, Cool Herc, and it all comes from sound system culture. Then it all made sense to me. Rah! So rap actually comes from the dance hall where they would rap on the break beat, and and I got it. Do you know what I mean? So having a interest in making up my own little raps as a kid to becoming a dancehall artist and doing dancehall DJing, to again coming back to hip hop culture and being able to merge the two, it was kind of just a natural thing for me. And then um, at the time, it's like Channel U was popping. Um, you know, the music in the UK was starting to take off, whereas before that there was no hip hop in the UK. The hip hop in the UK was American. You had a handful of people doing hip hop in the UK at a level that was worth talking about. So someone like Roots Maneuver, he was like the biggest. Um, Rodney P, you had people like that. Um, so yeah, I began to enjoy rap and really be feeling it. And at the time, what I used to do, my style turned into kind of like a hybrid style. So I was doing the Jamaican dancehall stuff, but I was doing it on hip hop beats. So I was doing Jamaican dancehall. We call it DJing, yeah, even though it's not DJing turntable or whatever, but we call it DJing. So I was doing reggae DJing on like Quiet Storm beat and on Missy Elliott. She's a down 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 down. You know what I'm saying? So and we would create dub plates on those kind of rhythms, and there was the maddest thing ever. They used to mash up the dances. So it's from then it was a natural progression for me to start rapping. And what I would do is I would do like the choruses of the songs within my reggae DJ kind of vibe, and I would spit bars during the verses. Yeah. That was kind of like my format. And even up to this day, I still kind of like use that format in some songs. Um, so so yeah. So that began to happen. And what was different was that I was rapping in an English accent, whereas most rappers at that time was rapping in an American accent, which didn't make no sense to me because we're not American, we're English. So let's make it relatable for. But anyway, that's another story. So that's kind of how I got into making music and doing it on a more serious level. Um, then DVD culture came out. YouTube I think is just kind of like starting to happen. DVD culture comes out. And you've got all these DVDs going around now. Lord of the Mics, Lord of the Decks, Sticky Business, The Streets is Raw, Streets Incarcerated, Icy Roads, Sticky, just all these different DVDs. Yeah. Street DVDs that will go around hood to hood. So you going to Brixton, to Tottenham, to Hackney, to Stonebridge, to Peckham, to wherever. Wherever there's a hood, there was an emergence of young rappers coming up spitting bars, right? And I was on a lot of those DVDs, and that's what kind of gained me my infamy within the early UK hip hop scene. Um, a lot of the DVDs that I was prominent on at that time, people like Gigs, North Star, Kano, Wiley, Jammer. You know what I mean? All these people were on the same DVDs, all coming up at the same time. Um, and yeah, that kind of like gained me my infamy. So within that, still on the roads. By then I've you know left selling weed and that, and now I'm selling crack and heroin, and I'm fully fledged on this, pursuing a gangster lifestyle, fully involved in gang culture. Friends and peers around me are being killed, are killing people, and it's just all chaotic, and we're all singing and rapping about it in our raps. Um, so within the midst of all of that, I caught a case and I went to prison. Um, so I went to prison for selling drugs. Um, Big operation. It was all messy. Undercover police and all of that. Um, and long story short, I pled guilty and I got 3 years. So going to prison now. It was weird because I got to prison and everybody knew me. That's when I understood the power of this DVD thing. The power of, because there is no YouTube, how YouTube is now. It's DVDs, right? Um, but it's weird. It's just I can't. I mean, for someone who hasn't experienced it, it's a weird feeling to go somewhere and a bag of people know who you are and you don't know these people. Do you know what I mean? Some people like the feeling. I'm not too sure. I have mixed. I mean, I guess now I don't really mind it because I'm not a part of certain lifestyle. Um, but if you're someone who is keeping up a bag of madness and someone can pick you out, someone I remember one time someone was on a bus in Brixton and they got off the top of the bus and they come off the bus to say to me, Cerose, oh, I just had to come off the bus because you're an incredible spitter. I just had to tell you that. And I was like, raw. Like, a part of me was flattered, but then when I thought about it, I was like, raw, my man, that could have been on top. You know what I mean? My man could have just come and took off my head. And I don't know. But anyway, that's for another story. So that's when I really understood the power of this music and the reach that it has. But I'm in prison at the moment. Anyway, throughout all of this as well, one of my good friends got signed to Def Jam UK. He was Def Jam UK's um, first rapper, first UK rapper to be signed. His name was Taz, is Taz. He's responsible for producing Rascal for Dizzy Rascal. Digga-dum dum digga-dum dum dum digga-dum dum. That's Taz's beat. So I was around all of that. Like the guy who played the bass on that Vanguard, like I know all those people. Um, so I kind of like got to piggyback on Taz's shoulders for a while and tour with him. Taz featured me on his album. Analyze This twice. He gave me two features on his album. That's how I got to meet people like Semtex and just be around the culture. Go to BBC One Extra and go to all these places. I did all of that through Taz, and again, that's a way that I kind of like made my name. Like springboarding off of the DVD culture into a more mainstream network. And I was very arrogant and prideful, and you know what I mean. So you either love me or you hate me. I mean, to be honest, I mean I think I'm still like that. Do you know what I mean? Even though I would hope by God's grace that I'm not as arrogant and I'm not as prideful. Scripture tells us to examine ourselves, you know. So I hope by God's grace that I mean I know I'm not who I used to be. I'm not that way, but you know, we're all a work in progress. So I'm not acting like I'm you know I'm there. I've arrived because I haven't. But the scripture said he is faithful to bring the work that he started to completion. So I'm very much a work in progress, as all of us are. You know what I mean? But yeah. So as I was saying, I was Marmite. You'd either love me or you hate me, and a lot of people, had love, had and have love for me. Then and even now from them times, you know what I mean? People still come in my inboxes on social media up to this day asking me questions about 20 years ago about PDC or about paid in full or about this or that or whatever, which again sometimes is a little bit discouraging because it just reminds me of the negative impact that I put out there into the culture. But at the same time, it's encouraging because people can see the work that God has done in my life and transformed me, which is a big reason why I didn't change my name when I got saved. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, the whole music thing got saved. No, before I got saved. So the whole music thing, went to jail, come out of jail. Now when I come out of jail now, based on the impact that I had, from the DVDs, from the whole Taz thing, and from going around and just making a name for myself, putting in that graph, because I was really running down this thing. I was really putting in graph, put out mad mixtapes, you know what I mean? PDC was the biggest rap collective and just the baddest thing that was happening at the time for about 2 or 3 years. You know what I mean? And then obviously SN1 and North Star and other groups came out. Um, but like PDC, we really went hard. We was like, I don't know, man, the English G Unit slash Wu Tang slash, I don't know how to describe it, but there's so many of us. You know, each artist was very talented within their own right. You know, so many mixtapes, solo and collective. And when I went to jail, it's like the whole thing really took off. So anyway, come out of jail, and an old time school bridging, not school bridging, like a bridging from the neighborhood. But from I knew him from around school days. You know, who by then was successful. He made it off the roads and had his hand in a couple properties, and you know, by hood standards, man would say he's made it. He's rich. Do you know what I mean? You know, like you're 20 years old or 22 years old or whatever, and you've got two properties. Like, bro, you're doing bits. You know what I mean? So that's the space he was at. He always loved music and loved the culture, but was never just didn't have that ability, that musical ability, but very business savvy and very smart guy in that respect. You know what I mean? Anyway, he come to me and say, "Yo, bro, like, I love what you're doing, and da 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 da. I want to help you. I'm starting this label. Like, I want you to help me do the label. I want you to be the main artist on the label. Boom, boom, boom." So anyway, we formed this label, London Entertainment, and started to do a little music within the UK. But at the time, we weren't getting the recognition. The police was on our case. You know, Trident, the Murder Squad, was shutting down our shows. Was phoning promoters who wanted to book us, saying, "Do not book PDC, do not book Cerose, do not rare rare rah rah," because they're involved in these kind of things. And you know, it's not only us they did that kind of stuff with. They did that stuff with Gigs and SN1, and they did that stuff with North Star, and you know, anyone who had a real presence in the streets outside of music, a real street movement or gang or whatever you want to say, the police was on them. So it didn't look like it was going to happen. You know, we're trying to leave the life. The police ain't letting us leave the life. So my man said, "Bro, come, let's try and do this thing. You know, I got a bit of money. Let's cut." Because meanwhile, I'm still in the streets. My face is everywhere. I'm bait, and I'm still in the streets doing this mad thing. And my man's like, "Bro, do you want to go back to jail? Like, come, like, let's do this thing, fam. Put that down. Let's concentrate 100% on music." So that's what we did, and we traveled for a bit and ended up spending a lot of time in America, which is where I was able to really see what the music industry is about. You know, I met a lot of different artists. I got collaborations with people like French Montana, Lumi D, G Dep, who just got out of jail the other day. I saw on the internet after something like 10 years or something like that. You know, Ransom and Serious Jones, and just bare people who I used to watch on DVD, on Smack DVD or All Access, or on Cocaine City or whatever. And now I'm in the room with these people. I'm in the studio with these people, and you know, my first mixtape when I put out in America was hosted by Cutmaster C. You know, Cutmaster C is a legendary mixtape DJ in the States. You know what I mean? So I was doing this now at a higher level than I ever have been, and in a way pioneering things as a UK artist, because this is way before any other UK artist was doing stuff like this. The closest a UK artist came to what I was doing at that time was Eurogang, when they got signed to Dame Dash and all of that. You know, but we left the UK and went abroad and was pursuing this thing abroad. So yeah, doing some quite groundbreaking pioneering stuff, and you know, and things was all right for a while. You know, had money, had girls, had jewelry, had what I wanted. basically was on the road to where I wanted to be. Um, you know, and it was around that time where, so we started off in New York for a few years, and then we moved to LA, and it's got even bigger then. Around that time, Frenchie started going out with Khloe Kardashian, and you just in certain rooms. I remember being in Diddy's studio when Khloe Kardashian's running around barefoot, and just wild situations. Do you know what I mean? That a Brixton boy don't really find themselves in, but we was there. Um, so got to a stage where I was yeah, predominantly in LA. The time I was staying in a mansion, this big mansion in LA. Like Post Malone was a roommate, and Bronze from Eurogang was living in the house as well, and there's um FKI, who was responsible for Iggy Azalea. They were the producers, and just again wild situations. Um, and it was within all of that where I just started to feel like, raw, is this it kind of thing? Is this where I want to be? Is this what I want to do? Um, I was starting to get over the hype. By then we was making a lot of money. Um, we was doing things. We was exposed to a certain lifestyle. Um, there was a lot of darkness involved as well. I mean, I've never seen any Illuminati contracts or anything like that, but the industry is heavily involved in all kind of weird sexual stuff, um, hard drugs, um, you know, just weird stuff that as as a Brixton youth from a Jamaican background, like this is some chichi man thing. Like, what may I do ya? You know what I mean? This ain't my thing, fam. Like, so there's all of these things going around in your head, and then this is where I would start to say that the seed that was sown in me as a child was starting to germinate, you know, asking these bigger questions like, what is this all about? You know what I mean? Um, you discover a lot of fake people, you know, you discover a lot of ulterior motives, you discover a lot of manipulation, um, you know, as well as nastiness, like whatever orgies, homosexuality, you know, or just people who are junkies, you know what I mean, who are just strung out on drugs all day, you know what I mean? Like whether it be cocaine or molly or heroin or or even just drunk alcohol. It was just a thing where it's like, is this what it's about? You know what I mean? You pretend to be this person to the world, but in your real life, you're just a junkie. um, and then it becomes a thing where you rely on these things to to fuel what you're doing, because whether it be studio or touring or whatever, it's very taxing on the body. So a lot of artists rely on substances, whether that be alcohol or drugs or whatever, and I'm talking about hard stuff, you know, to actually to function. You know what I mean? Which is why you hear a lot of artists ODing or committing suicide, or they just get mashed up one way or another, because you know it's difficult, and that in that world is surrounded by all of that, and you have to be a very strong-minded individual not to succumb to it, not to be affected by it. or it's just the grace of God on your life. Do you know what I mean? Um, and there's a handful of people who have longevity within specifically the music industry. I would say the entertainment industry in general, but specifically the music industry, um, who have longevity and maintain success. Um, yes, it's a handful of people. Do you know what I mean? It's not a lot. Um, and even then, I would say that those people have got other issues going on in their life. It just might not be that they're strung out on alcohol and drugs, or just a messy romantic life, or whatever. We've all got issues, but when you're in the public eye and you're doing things at a high level like that, um, yeah, I think everything's amplified. But anyway, I'm banging on a bit. So it was within that time where I started to ask the big questions again. Like, what is this about? Is this what I really want to do? I wasn't even enjoying what I was doing. I wasn't even enjoying meeting some of these people. I would have experiences where I would meet people who have really respected their music, and they turn out to be like, not nice people. They turn out to be like,
To put it mildly.
huh?
To put it
To put it
mildly.
mildly, yeah, you know what I'm trying to say. They turn out to be just, I wish I didn't meet you, because now I don't want to listen to your music. You know what I'm saying? Like things like that. Um, and so yeah, man, I started having big, but by now I'm so invested. It's like I'm wrestling with, well, so what am I really gonna do? Go back to England and sell drugs again? Like, do you know what I mean? And there's this thing where you will be as successful as the people around you for no reason. You know, you are what you're around. So do I just bite my lip? Yeah, I don't like it, but do I just stay around because I'm on the verge of bussing? I'm on the verge of really doing this thing, you know. I'm in LA. I got all these things going on. Like my brethren had a girl for me lined up for me to marry, for me to get my stay in America, and all these things going on. Do you know what I mean? But is that what I really want to do? So at the time, my parents had a house in Jamaica, and I left LA and I went to Jamaica for a while. Um, and my girl from England, my wife now, she came with me. So anyway, it was in Jamaica, and it was 2014, and ISIS was on the TV chopping off people's heads and killing people in the name of Islam and whatever, whatever. And by then, I was of the persuasion that you know, there's only one God. I've always believed there's only one God from my upbringing, and I was of the persuasion that Islam is just the Arab way to get to the God of the Bible, and Hinduism is just the Indian way to get to the God of the Bible. And, it's all kind of like the same message of love and peace, but just every kind of nation has their own prophet. Yeah. That's how I used to see things. So like universalism, that's how I used to see things at that time. But I think the whole thing with ISIS sort of made me start to question, like, but how is this peaceful? How can this be love and peace and stuff? They're chopping off man's head. And then, at this time a lot of stuff about the Quran was coming out, you know fight against the non-believers and whatever things like that. So that really started to make me ask questions. My dad, who I said before, was a pastor, so I was at my dad's house in Jamaica. When my parents live in Jamaica, it's on a mountain. There's no internet access. The TV don't even work. You know what I mean? So it's so high up in the mountain. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of time for conversation, and for just the distraction of the phone and everything else is gone. You know what I mean? It's back to basics, talking, what I mean, sharing ideas, eating food, you know, opening the scriptures. And God really used that time and used my dad to answer the questions that I was having, about so many things. I mean, in the Caribbean, you wake up at the crack of dawn and literally the cock's crowing like 6 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? and you're having breakfast at like 8 o'clock. You know what I mean? Whereas in England, I don't really have breakfast. I might have a cup of coffee and a slice of toast at 9:30 at 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? In yard, 8 o'clock, you're having ackee and saltfish and dumpling and plantain and this big breakfast. So anyway, every morning we're having this breakfast and we're just reasoning for hours, bro. You know what I mean? And then after reasoning, I'll follow my dad into the bush and we're digging out yam out of the ground. And you know what I mean, the tea I'm drinking is leaves from the tree that I've dried and I'm boiling the leaves. And so I'm really getting, you know, and all of this, I'm appreciating God's creation from all of this. So we're studying and chopping up the scriptures in the morning, and then we're out in God's creation in the late morning, afternoon, you know, cooking the yam that we've dug out of the ground, and the sweet potato that we've dug out of the ground, and cooking the chicken that I killed a couple of days ago, called my aunt and my uncle rare chickens. Do you know what I mean? Just connecting back with God's creation, and out of Babylon for a while, out of the Western system. Like I said, the phone was for me to use my phone and go to the internet. I had to go off the mountain and go into like the little town bit in Ocho Rios in Jamaica, where we can get Wi-Fi. You know what I mean? So yeah. Throughout that time, I was in Jamaica. I was supposed to be there for a few weeks. I ended up being there for 5 months at that time. Um, and like I said, God really used that time to minister to me through my dad, and not only minister to me, is ministering to my girl as well, which was very powerful. Because unlike me, my girl didn't grow up with a Christian background in a Christian home, or her grandma was a Christian, but she grew up. Her parents was very much just like non-Christian people. Do you know what I mean? So to see God speak to her, I was like, rah. Because having conversations with my dad, I really began to get convicted and say stuff like, rah, do you know what? I'm going to need to get baptized or something, because this, I can't really ignore what I'm learning and the feelings I'm having. I didn't verbalize it. And then one day after a study and whatever, she turned around and said to me, I think we need to get baptized. I was like, raw. It's like, okay. But even then, I still didn't. It's a process, right? So anyway, after a few months of being in the yard, my girl went back to England. I went back to LA. During that time I was in LA, I was only there for about 6 weeks at that time. After everything I went through in yard and all of that, I just knew like this, what I'm doing now, this ain't for me. Something has to change here. I need it became like an obsession for me to get to the bottom of this God thing, and put the final nail in the coffin of who God is, and pursuing my purpose, pursuing what God wants me to do. Because I've always felt like a leader. I've always felt like I've had a calling on my life. Back then, I thought I was supposed to be, a famous rapper who would do, because I've always sort of been politically minded and sort of religious minded in one way or another. Like, coming up in my late teens, I was into conspiracy theories and the New World Order and Illuminati and David Icke and reptilian agenda, and I was really into all of this, and I would have it in my raps. You know what I mean? Like, I had a rap that I used to rap on a DVD, like, don't let the shadows deceive ya. We're surrounded by creatures with demonic presence and reptilian features. The leader had to enforce the order, put chips in our sons and daughters. Revelation like you never seen before, cause we know the chip is 666. We know the score. Take away the food, we're gonna chore. If they don't bring it out, we're going to the doors. And that was my secular stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I always had this revolutionary type thing that I'm supposed to be a leader of some sort. And I was always inspired by people like, Marcus Garvey and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and Steve Biko. And I was always inspired by all of these people you know. And I always loved Jesus, you know, and believed in Jesus, but didn't believe fully. So I believed, but I wasn't following, as I think my brethren put it the other day. You know what I mean? But we know the demons believe and they tremble. So, so going back now, like I was saying, I always believed that there was a calling on my life. I just didn't know what it was, and I needed to find this out. I was convinced now that I'm not supposed to be this rich and famous rapper. It's not just about getting money and stunting on people. Um, you know, there's more to it, and there's something that I have to do. Um, there's something God has for me to do, kind of thing. So anyway, yeah, left LA knowing that this what the road I'm going down, I need to turn around. I need to go a different direction. Came back to England, and that's when I really started to look into the scriptures. Um, and I'm not going to advise this for people, but I really went to YouTube and started to look and research specifically into Christianity, uh, because again, I was convinced that the Bible is true, but I wasn't fully convinced at that time that the Bible and Christianity is the only way. You know what I mean? I was still like, well, but maybe the Muslims can get saved if they just believe in God, kind of thing. And maybe I was still kind of like of that persuasion. So anyway, started to look on YouTube, discovered apologetics, you know, and things like historical proof of Jesus, historical proof of the crucifixion, historical proof of the apostles of the New Testament. Like, this stuff was not just a story. I discovered, like, wow, there's footprints, there's evidence, manuscripts, critical thinking, all of these things. I found out about the Dead Sea Scriptures. I started to find out so much stuff that basically solidified for me that the Bible is the truth. And what it did was it it pushed away, it took the sense out of the nonsense. So all these the Islam and the Hindu thing and I saw the big gaping holes in all of these belief systems, because the evidence for the scriptures and for Christianity and for Christ, nothing else has that. No other belief system has that. you know. So if we're just thinking about it logically, we know it's not a logical thing. It is by the power of the spirit, but I believe God uses these things in different people to bring them to a point of repentance, and salvation. And for me, God really used apologetics to help me to understand the truth of the scriptures. When I understood that the scriptures was true, that helped me to actually pay more attention to what the scriptures say. Do you know what I mean? And I just started to get it. I started to get the Bible is a library of 66 different books. It's all different stuff. It's history, it's poetry, it's eyewitness accounts, it's prophecy, it's all of the and I so when I understood, it's letters, epistles, letters to different churches. And this is why this letter, the book of First Corinthians, is a letter of correction. And when I started to understand what I was reading, I was able to read it in a certain way that I would get it. Do you know what I mean? And bit by bit, God just started to reveal himself through Christ, through the Bible to me. And I was sitting down in my front room one day. This went on for months, bro. This went on for about 7, 8 months. You know what I mean? I started even going to one church. I found one rapper on the internet and I would say, yo, my man, because by now I stopped rapping. By now I'm just studying and just looking into the scriptures, and I was obsessed, brother. I was obsessed. I was up all night watching YouTube videos, going back to the Bible, phoning my dad in Jamaica. Yo, dad, what does this mean? And like, just obsessed. I was sucking it all up like a Hoover. Like I was a sponge for knowledge and information. Once I knew all these other stuff was false, I was like, okay, this is the truth. I need. And anyway, but I was still rebelling. I was still shotting. I was still on the roads. You know what I mean? Still answering my phone and lining things up and whatever. That was still going on. And anyway, I found this Christian rapper that was just rapping, but it didn't sound corny, and you know what I mean? He sounded good. Um, so I started to reach out to Christian rappers, um, you know, and long story short, I got invited to one church, started attending this church, but things in the church that was going on weren't really sitting right with me. Um, and then that prompted me back to the Bible. Do you know what I mean? Like, well, if they're doing this in the church, how come the Bible don't say that? Like, what? Or the Bible, they're doing this in the church, but the Bible says if you're doing this, you got to do it in this way. Why aren't they doing that? All these things was kind of like coming out. Um, and then I developed, like, the Lord just gave me this gift of discernment where I knew, because the internet is a barrage of things in it. Like I would write things in it and go to, and it would take me to videos, and I would just, nah, this don't sound right. This sounds off. I would just feel it in my spirit. Like this sounds off. And yeah, I mean, and I guess obviously it's the spirit that enables us to have that ability, but it also comes from knowing the word. The more you know the word, um, is the more you're able to identify false teaching. Um, so one day I was in, yeah, like I said, this going on for months. Um, Going to church here and there, not too chuffed with what's going on in the church. So I stopped attending the church. I met Dwayne Triumph, and Dwayne Triumph was having a Bible study. Dwayne Triumph is, I would say, a UK Christian hip hop pioneer. Um, I would put him in that category. So I reached out to Dwayne Triumph on the internet, because I remember hearing about him through one of my baby mothers. Um, and yeah, he was doing a Bible study. So his Bible study became my church. I stopped going to church because some stuff going on that I would have said, boy, do you know what? That's a bit mad. Still, I'm not even entertaining all of that. I don't see that in the Bible, so I'm not going there no more. Um, but it was Dwayne's Bible study where I was getting fed, and was able to reason. And there was a few other people, like you mentioned, Leslie Sky, earlier. That's where I met Sky, at Dwayne's Bible study. And there was a few of us. We used to call ourselves the Circle of Fire. So there was a few of us, maybe about 7 or 8 of us, that used to meet every Sunday evening, in Dwayne's house, and chop up the scriptures. And we was predominantly chopping up end times prophecy. We was looking at Matthew 24 and Revelation and Daniel 9 and all of these things. You know, I've always had a interest in the end times, like I told you before. So I was sitting down reading my Bible throughout all of this, reading the Gospel of Matthew, and all of a sudden it just hit me, like it was like shoom, the Spirit just brought it all to a head, and the light bulb ding. When you talk about light bulb moment, that's when it came on. Right, Jesus is real. The Bible's true. I don't remember what exactly I was reading at that time, but I know it was the Gospel of Matthew. And it's like it just hit me like a ton of bricks, brother. I just started to cry. Like, rah, this thing is real. This is true. And I just started to cry, bro. Like, bar like a baby. My nose was running everything. I'll never forget it. My girl was upstairs. She was pregnant at this time. She was upstairs. And I was just sobbing in my front room, bro. You know what I mean? Like, realizing that Jesus died for me. You know what I mean? Jesus paid the price for my sin. He was killed for my sin. He died in my place. And just recollecting all the things that I've done, and just recollecting everything. And I went through a season. When I say a season, like a brief season, so maybe like an hour or so, or 2 hours of mourning, like being mournful of the death of Christ. You know what I mean? Like like someone would mourn a dead parent or something. I don't know how to explain it. You know what I mean? I went through a phase like that, and then it's like I realized that, like, rah, but he's not dead. He's alive. He rose again. He is alive. You know what I mean? He conquered death. And then I never forget it. I always say this great feeling of euphoria came over me, and the only way I can describe this, I felt like there was this amazing orchestra that was inside of me, and they was playing this heavenly music. I didn't hear no music. It is, I can't put into words the feeling, but undescribable joy, my brother, right? And I never forget. I went to sleep with this feeling, and I woke up with the feeling, bro. I never forget it. I don't have that current feeling now, but this is just what was going on in me, and I've had it again since then. I have had it since then, but it's not like this is I've had that feeling. This feeling's always been with me since then, because it hasn't. Um, when I explained that how I felt to Dwayne said to me, "Bro, that was the baptism of the Holy Spirit you was having right there."